Welcome back, boys and girls, to another good old episode of Passing the Peace Pipe. As always, your residential shaman, the Packer, right here with you. And I've got next to me...
Blitzfreak, hey!
Hey! This week we're chucking the old T Rampa, Rompa Dompa in the bowl. If you don't know about him, you will. Just listen up. And he's a boy from Tibet, or at least he claims to be so. And he's got quite the interesting story. He's a bit of an author. He's written a couple of books. One from the perspective of his cat, I believe.
That was a very good book.
Yeah.
I read the whole thing. He claimed the whole way through that he was not the author of the book, that his cat was the author of the book, and he's simply able to read the mind of his cat.
That's fair enough. I feel like I've got a connection like that with my cat sometimes.
Right, I wonder if that's how Game of Thrones was written.
What? It's
An
from the
animal told him.
perspective of a dragon.
Maybe it was from a perspective of a dragon.
What, do you think George R. R. Martin's just got a pet dragon somewhere? He just keeps under the basement giving him ideas for the next book?
Maybe.
Maybe that's why it's taking him so long for a next one. He needs to appease his dragon and he hasn't got enough gold and stuff to fill the dragon's hoard.
I reckon that guy's got enough gold. Maybe he just doesn't like... Maybe the dragon's hibernating.
Oh, yeah, true. Well, that's what I'm saying. I mean, maybe he needs enough gold
to wake it.
To wake it, yeah, exactly. You never know.
Very
Something like
interesting.
that. You know, it could have like a... Or maybe they just need like some hobbits or like dwarfs to go and try and steal something from the dragon. That woke it up. We've seen that work.
So when I was younger, I got into reading a lot of books, like a lot of Stephen King's, pretty much read every single one of them. And I used to read anything that my dad would have. I used to have a lot of books on bloody Vikings and warriors and things like that. And then one day I found his collection of Rampa T Lobsang novels. This was absolutely brilliant. This was a Tibetan monk who had written about his life ever since he was raised in a monastery since he was 7 years old. And he wrote all about Tibet and how all the monks survive and all the skills that they have. It was absolutely fantastic. It taught you how he opened his third eye by drilling a tiny hole into his forehead. It showed you the different foods and everything that they made in the monasteries. And I just thought this stuff was great. I remember reading one of the recipes to a drink that they drink every day. And it's made from some sort of barley.
Was it a bit of the old purple drink?
It was not the purple drink. It was
No.
actually a yellow, chunky type drink.
Ooh.
I made it. I made this drink up and I drank it, and it was super bland, like not good at all. But
What's it made out of?
it was some sort of like barley compound,
Okay.
but either way, the mixtures of it were wrong. Like what he described, absolutely terrible. Drank it, and I thought I'm doing the same as him. I was following the guide. If you ever read The Third Eye, there is a guide in it that teaches you basically how to understand what other people are communicating better. A lot of these skills people really have, but some they don't have, like really reading the mind of your animal. Like we can, but that sounds silly in saying it, because a lot of people would tell you that you can never understand what an animal's thinking. But then you have a whole lot of people, which I think you're the same, where we can look at animals and we know kind of what they're thinking. Like,
oh, dude, I totally, especially with my cat, I fucking know what she's thinking, buddy. Always
yeah.
wants food now or attention now, and it's different meows at me as well. They just give you a look and you go, yeah, it's that time of day, you're giving me that look, I know you want to go outside.
Yeah, and that interaction you have, that's a skill that you had to develop. Like, so you've learned that in life.
And it's also really crazy just having like that cross-species communication as well.
Yes.
And it's like you kind of can't communicate, but you also are, and you've kind of reached an understanding without the natural form of communication that's so natural for us humans to humans.
Yeah, it's pretty incredible. Like, because when I start to look at the things he said, I mean, he had he claims that his cat that his cat wrote a book by mentally telling him the words to write down. He wrote the stories. I forget, it might be called The Cat's Eye or something. It's very easy to look it up. And that was a fantastic book as well. The whole time he claimed he was just the person writing it, but he was not the author. It was always his cat. Now, this sounds really silly, but because I'm a little bit older, I grew up in a time where there was no internet, and fact-checking meant talking to the smartest person you know. And that was really difficult for a lot of people, so you didn't know what was true. I mean, I grew up when there was no way to prove that Yetis and stuff didn't exist. Like, we didn't see them and no one really thought about these things, but a lot of things that seem ridiculous now, there was no way to say they were ridiculous then. And because there are some of the things he was describing was real, but then other things which went on to become a gigantic lie about, like, which everyone's probably heard this, that's spread from Tibet. You might have even heard it come from like other parts of India, because Tibet obviously was in India, India's rule. Is they have the lie that you can train to see a human aura.
Oh yeah, I've heard about that.
And I believed this was true. You cannot see a human aura. And I, as a scientist, someone who did chemistry and stuff, there is nothing that is going to be different on the outside of someone's body. No electrical charge that will vary based off of someone's being honest to you or not. This was not a real thing. But somehow, from this guy saying it, it has spread to becoming real. Now,
Well, yeah, that's like how most myths and legends do spread. It's just like something that can't really be disproved, and so it's just told over and over as a story.
yes,
And it kind of changes as well. That's like why, you play Chinese Whispers as a kid. It shows you how people add a little thing or forget a detail or something.
I mean, in this case, they didn't even put it down as a myth. This guy's book was published as fact. And it was a bestseller. I mean, Rampa T Lobsang was a bestseller. But then they did an investigation into him, and it turned out that he was a British plumber born in 1910. So that would have made him 48 by the time he wrote this book, and was claiming he was a Tibetan monk. It was all made up.
How old was he claiming to be as the monk?
Well, that's where it was interesting. When he was questioned on it, he'd actually changed his name 10 years prior to a different Tibetan name, which is a longer story. But he claims that he was the plumber, and that he had I want to say a visit on the astral plane, because he also talks about astral planes, being able to basically leave your body and communicate with other people who can also leave their bodies just in their spirit. So he claims that the spirit of Rampa T Lobsang visited him on the astral plane and then said to him, "You seem like you're done with your life and that you don't like what's happening. How about we work together and I basically take over your body and now you live as me?" And he says that's what happens. And he agreed to it. And therefore he really is Rampa T Lobsang. And he claims that everything... And he claimed this till the day he died in 1981. It was January. And he claims this till the day he died. No matter what evidence was presented against him, he just said it's all real, even though it was not real, people. I believed a lot of this stuff was real, and I'm going to tell you something that, by all means, you post under the bottom if I'm wrong, because I hope to God I'm wrong on this, but I believed, until I was maybe in my late 20s, that a favourite pastime of Tibetan children was being tied to giant kites and being pulled around by your parents. Sounds like great fun. Wished I was a Tibetan kid.
Sounds like some bloody Avatar stuff with the bloody air monks in the air temple. You ever seen The Last Airbender? They've got like these big kites.
Love
and then the
that.
monks. Yeah, it totally sounds like Aang with it.
As you say that,
Do you
I
think
realise-
like maybe they like probably read some Rampa T Lobsang and then just chucked that bit in?
it is so rampant that even if they didn't read Rampa T Lobsang, they read someone who read Rampa T Lobsang.
Yeah, or at least
and
chatted to
created it.
someone.
This is a giant lie, And I started to realize that nearly everything I'd ever heard about Tibet was based off of the misinformation of this one person, because it was considered a work of fact, so people are allowed to reference it. So people were referencing things that happened in Tibet which never happened. People cannot teleport. People do not run so fast that it looks like they vanish. These are not real things. These are not skills that people lose. And if they did have the skills, I guarantee you Tibetan monks would not have been pushed out by the Chinese.
Well, yeah. If you could teleport, you're probably, pretty good.
Yeah, and people will tell you things like in the books it used to say as well that monks are not allowed to kill people, and monks are not allowed to be violent and stuff. Well, I didn't realize that the monks aren't meant to kill people. They're meant to do everything they can to not kill someone, because that is considered like a sin, or however they look at it. So
It would,
they have
damage their... I want to say damage karma, but I don't think that's right.
No, they have these horrible things called butterfly knives, but not like that you flick.
Oh, I know. I meant instead of sins, what would be the impact in the Buddhist religion? They would probably just think
you're less enlightened.
Well, yeah, there is with their reincarnation and everything, they go through what's called the wheel of life, and you basically move around this wheel over and over and over, and you, depending on what your actions is on the wheel, so during your lifetime, that's how it affects your next rotation, which is your reincarnation. And so if you do more bad stuff, you get born lower down, and you can even be born as an insect and everything. So that's why Buddhists actually won't, the ones that, there are some that are vegetarian, and then there are some that are not. But all of them will try to never kill any living creature at all. So I've even been up to temples and whatnot, and they're like always completely close the toilets so no mosquitoes get in there and die by accident and stuff. So they're even concerned with mosquitoes and whatnot, because they're like, all life can move up and down, and that could be like a bad criminal that's going through this but needs to get back up to learn and to prosper, basically, and to become better. And what you do is you keep going around the wheel, and how you get off the wheel is you become human, and then you reach enlightenment. And then when you reach enlightenment, you can enter nirvana, which is off the wheel, and it's kind of like their version of heaven.
See, Rampa used to talk about these things, and that's what made it so difficult, was what you just talked about. That's known about through all Buddhists.
Yeah,
and
yeah.
Hindus,
There's like three main sets of Buddhists. There's can't remember the other two, but one of them is like a Zen Buddhism.
So Rampa, he's just basically used some facts and then created fictions around it. But when I was younger, they were fictions that you could possibly practice and believe. And I mean, I remember sitting there, and it wasn't just Rampa T Lobsang. I remember watching like Jean-Claude Van Damme in a movie Hold His Breath for ages. And growing up, I believed that, like, you look at Rampa claimed he could hold his breath for something like 10 minutes or whatever. I doubt he could, but in saying that, I bet if you were to look online now, you probably could find people who hold their breath for ridiculous amounts of time.
There is definitely like
I don't think I
record
ever
holders and
broke
whatnot.
like over 2.5 minutes, and that's not good. That's not good. That's if you start, you practice.
Yeah.
It's not long, and then you hear about people going 5 minutes and plus. And
No, I think I'd probably be shy of 2 minutes.
yeah,
Probably be lucky to get a minute and a half.
but he even used to claim levitation. And then, like I say, he wrote all these books, but he made it seem like it was possible. And it was just crazy that he wasn't even a Tibetan. And then I realized I've read none of my information from the country of Tibet. And if they were conquered, like in the 50s, and none of their information's been coming out anyway, I think I know nothing about Tibet. If the Chinese keep everything hidden, I don't really know what it looks like. I don't know what they do there. I only have this vision of the books I read when I was younger. And when you look at when they were written, then you start looking at anyone who's written anything about Tibet, all seems to be after that. And they have these beliefs that might not be true. I mean, I know that monks were pretty much despised by everyone, especially Tibetans during World War II, because they were like they were the spies. So people used to travel between countries and they'd spy on people.
So they're not really
So they
monks.
can move.
They're just people dressed as monks being spies. Well, spies dressed
I
as
guess,
monks.
but then you
But
might.
then
It
there'd
could
be
turn
real
out that-
monks as well.
But what is a real monk? Maybe there were real monks, but maybe those few real monks in the monasteries were just like jokes to the rest of them, going, these guys, they come to work, and instead of following the line that we tell everyone about enlightenment, they're actually trying to find it. Whereas we're actually just an organization, like any throughout history, that deals in information and power. I mean, they had nice palaces and stuff. I mean, I went on even further to believe that Tibetan, a lot of the things I read about Tibet, they also had some of the most incredible sideshow performances I'd ever heard of. Well, the Tibetans were the ones getting bricks broken on their head. He said all of these things. Now, I did know that he was... when I found out that he was fake, I still went on a few years later to perform in a sideshow where I did a lot of things that they always claimed the Tibetans had done, like getting bricks smashed on their heads. I had spears put in my throat and a lot of crazy stuff like that. But looking back, I don't think that they did it. I think I read books and went on to live in a world that's not real. Thank you, Rampa T Lobsang.
Here's a little nugget of I'm not sure, but it is like a bit of a rumor that I've heard. But with Christianity and Jesus, there's that gap between in the Bible where Jesus was a kid and then he comes back and he's like in his late 20s. A lot of people believe that he went and studied in a monastery with Buddhists during that time, and you can actually see a lot of similarities within Buddhism and Christianity, and with how they could cross over, and how things are just kind of called something different but can kind of mean the same thing. Because there is a bit in the Bible where it's like hell is on earth, and that could also mean like maybe it's just kind of the same sort of go around as reincarnation. So if you think like you're a human, you do really bad, and then you get reborn as this ant that gets to live like 2 days and it gets stepped on, and then you get reborn again as something else and it just gets eaten really horribly and teared apart alive, or then you get reborn as a rabbit and a bunch of wolves come and kill you, and that just keeps happening as you're going up, and you're just suffering and suffering and suffering until basically the God, universe, higher power kind of decides that you've suffered enough. And then you can keep getting reborn as something better and better and better. But you're still kind of paying for that, so you're going through like kind of a hell on earth sort of thing. But over and over until you kind of make penance and you can work your way back up the wheel of life and then go up through there. And then that's also, because once you get off that wheel of life, you can go to nirvana, or as I said, you can go to heaven, which is probably you. And they say you get off the wheel of life, so that's you going to like a pure spirit form.
Yep.
And going to like another plane where all the other spirits are there. And you can also, because you're just in this pure form, you can basically create whatever you want with your mind, like lucid dreaming, basically, except forever.
Lucid dreaming was another thing he spoke
Yeah.
about. Yeah.
Well, that's real. I've lucid dreamed a couple of times, and it's pretty tricky, and you gotta not wake yourself up. But it is fun when you can do it.
I've always subscribed, well, again, from the things you learn and the things you read when you're younger, I've subscribed to the wheel of life and like reincarnation. And I find that that encourages humans to want to do better. You know you need to learn more. If you don't like how things are going, you have to do better. You have to try harder. And I doubt this is the first time in history it's happened, but it's weird now where we have that thing where everyone says all people are equal. The saying's actually all people are created equal in the eyes of the law. Because if you honestly believe we're all equal and we're all just trying to get by and we're all doing the same, then you couldn't believe in reincarnation and the wheel of life, because we would all be at different places in our journey. And you're not meant to admit it, but surely there's other humans that you look at, and just because you've made it to human, I doubt it goes cat, dog, human. There's probably 50 levels of human, like 10 levels of hawk.
Well, yeah.
Why do I keep coming back as a hawk? And it's like, oh, this time I'm a much stronger hawk. And
That's it. You can come back and go back and forth.
you can go back and forth.
From being human, and then you get another time at going human, and then you might have a skill that you built up in a different life.
But you'd never be able to reach enlightenment as a human in one lifespan. You'd have lots of lives. So even if you're going in one direction, you'd have a lot. So if you subscribe to this idea, which I do, then there'd be a lot of people on the planet who they are just better than we are, and people who are worse. And I believe there are people who are a lot better than me, and
yeah,
as humans. But in a lot of Western countries, you're not even meant to say that.
Well,
we're all
that's
meant
it.
to say, "Oh, we're definitely equal."
No, but like it is.
You can spend your days
I get
learning
it. Like
shit, and the other person can spend their days looking at a wall, but you're still equal. Going,
Yeah.
you're not equal.
well, all human life is equal, but people at a person with skills and whatnot. Someone's more skilled as a mechanic than someone is as a cook.
No,
People,
but I mean,
people are like more musicians and
But enlightenment is more like learning how. I know this would be argument of is learning how to be kinder or understand things better. Like understand things as a universal whole. How working well with others just makes your life better.
Yeah.
Or like but then or even if
more
it doesn't make your life better,
lessons learned.
still trying to help other people might still be beneficial. Like I don't know,
No, it's always good to help people.
yeah. So it's man, that was a really good point though. Like they are very similar in that aspect.
Well, yeah, and that's why they've got like that gap theory with Jesus, that he actually went and trained in a temple for a while and learnt those teachings as well.
Okay.
Mm.
Man, so Tibet is a crazy place.
Yeah, so much going on, just throughout history and everything, and then like just people's warped perspectives on it as well.
Yeah, and on a side note, which I was like, I'd like to finish sort of on Tibet.
Yeah,
I
go
believe
for
that.
it.
Okay, so Shaolin monks. Shaolin, I think, translates to Tibetan, small Tibetan forest or something. I'm pretty sure they're Tibetan, so I could be off on this. But either way, the Shaolin monks, they used to travel around and they used to do sideshow performances and claim that they were super strong and that they could do these things. And when I say used to, I mean like 10, 15 years ago. Now, I saw one of their shows, and they're full of shit. They're completely full of shit. All of their sideshow stuff was absolutely fake. So I started saying stuff about them, like on the internet, because like, and on my like, what was it, MySpace and stuff. And
Back in the day.
Yep. And they claim that they're not about money and everything, but they're traveling around collecting money. People just give them free large sums of money to buy properties and stuff like that, and spread the word or whatever. And but monks aren't meant to be taking all that money and stuff. And I basically ragged on them, and I was like, oh, I will fight any of those Tibetan monks. And instead, what we got was cease and desists. And I got messages and emails from places like MySpace going, you have to stop saying these things about them. Like, most people that I sent things to going, I can do better sideshow than you. Most people I taunted tried just to ignore me. But the monks, they actually sent a cease and desist. I do not like them. Shaolin monks, not cool. Thought Tibet was better than that.
Yeah. Alright, well, we're just going to finish up there for this week. I've had a good time. A little bit more about Tibet. And,
Yeah, that was fun. I reckon I could actually talk about Romper. I could talk about him for hours and hours. You really have to look him up, and I would seriously suggest to read his books. And they're definitely good books to even to give to kids and stuff. But it's better if you tell them they're not real.
yeah, make sure you slap that fiction label on it. Alright, so we're about out, and we're going to head off, get some food and all that. You know how it is.
Blitzfreak out!
Woo!